Mbonu C, Obiageli, and here goes pedagogy, where I talk to you about social, political, and economic matters in the form of a 1,000-word essay to grow your mind. Subscribe and keep watching. My mother's first feedback on the Pedagogy channel is that I must tone down my English. Yet here I am again. But I have searched for a word more suitable to capture the overarching predicament of the aid fiasco since the eruption of independence of African nations, and no word is more suitable than fungible. Between 1960 and present, Africa has received trillions of dollars in development aid, about 1.2 trillion in the last 30 years, yet from the social, political, and economic conditions of the continent, we can conclude that aid has largely failed to deliver its promises. Whilst there are many reasons for this, at the center of them all is fungibility. While the mention of the amount of aid that has flowed into Africa is tingling to the ears, and invites multitude of commentators who are quick to estimate how many Marshall Plans that translates to. Along with them are those who posit that if war-torn Europe could do better on aid, why can't Africa? Yet, there is ample evidence to show that the Marshall Plan, which was the aid sent to Europe from the US for the reconstruction and economic recovery post-World War II, and the present-day development aid had different terrains and different timelines. In Europe, set within a 4-year period, the objective was reconstructing a centuries-old system, while in Africa, without an end date, it was attempting to build a system from scratch in nations which has just gotten off the fetters of colonialism. Research has shown that post-colonial governments will always act in the manner of their colonial masters. However, this persistence of aid, or at least the way it is administered, after continued decry from leading economists, begs the question on whether the intentions of aid are genuinely that of development or are just for paternalistic output of economic institutions locked into our global economy that must be dispersed, whether progress is made or not, whether it is used purposefully or not. And hence, this tingly announcement, anytime it is unaccompanied with further deconstruction, appears rather sensationalist at best. In development economics, there are two fundamental schools of thought. The first, the opponents of aid essentially believe that aid is the problem for which it claims to be the cure, citing that aid disrupts the flow of free markets, often flooding economies with artificial cash, which is both politically and economically destructive in the long run. The second, the proponents of aid, assert that poor countries will remain in a state of poverty known as the poverty trap until their economy is brought alive by external funding. This outside help, aid, can then set the cycle of economic growth rolling. This shares similarities with Newton's first law, where a body will remain at rest unless acted upon by an external force. However, the pertinent question then is, when does aid stop flowing? If after over 60 years of external forces and outside help, the fire of development has not been kindled, the ball has not been rolling, and regression is widespread, is aid still the solution? In the fragile republics that ensued as the new African states in the 60s emerged, dilly-dallying between autocracy and democracy, and without the fortifying strength of years in her economic and political institutions, aid provided unfathomable quantities of cash for the dead elites. It is this fundamental fungibility of aid that the economist Moyo has argued made development and infrastructure scant after all these years. That aid money could be and can still be diverted towards other ventures and for mostly personal gain. In the book Dead Aid, in a title that implies that aid money is dead even on arrival, Moyo prescribes market-based approaches rooted in the movement of capital and competition, including trade, foreign direct investments, capital markets, remittances, microfinance, and savings as the devices for economic growth. These are the levers that will set off the vicious cycle of development of human capital, access to management expertise, skills and technology, a diversified industrial base, technology transfer and innovation, export promotion, employment generation, and infrastructure development. Certainly, aid cannot do this. Several authors have sided with both the proponents and opponents of aid alike. As a matter of fact, one reason I find the field of development economics quite interesting is that it appears that the professionals in that field are having one cohesive in-house conversation through the books they author and founded on the rigorous research they engage. As they all publish these books, I am certain they are aware that sooner or later, someone, somewhere, is going to respond with a different perspective on the way out of poverty. Out of these vast volumes of text have come many recommendations, projections, and predictions. Yet we are nearing the end of the first quarter of the 21st century, and Africa and the multitude of counsel is regressing. Aid has not worked, democracy has not worked, our heavily endowed resources have not worked, and quite distressingly, our human capital, the souls of the continent, the hope for tomorrow, the future leaders, are not working. Because if they have been called future leaders for over 30 years, it is safe to say that it's a future that may never come. What then is the next step? Mass immigration to working nations? Evade any topic on African development? Focus on one's personal life and family as Africa sorts itself out? Whatever your answer, you are within your rights. Yet, in the revered words of Paul, I show you a more excellent way. Granted, there are no quick fixes in the process of attaining our collective prosperity. Necessity is, however, laid on us to be deeply concerned about the citadel of our ancestors, the homeland of melanin, the light of human ideals, our continent. All I ask for is concern. Of inestimable value is the diaspora, a people who have tasted and seen that it can be done. For the power of a people's diaspora to leverage on the outputs from the working systems where they are rooted cannot be overemphasized. The Africans in Africa might be justified in being subdued in the system in which they live. Well-settled Africans in diaspora who choose to do nothing do not share in that justification. I will end with the recommendation of Nobel Prize economist Banerjee and Duflo, authors of Poor Economics. It is the small incremental changes that trigger the start of a quiet revolution. And that small change, that little change, begins with you.